Genshin Impact, a game with good vibes, summer tides, and black guys. Yeah, kind of. You know, we're sort of tiptoeing the line here. They don't got anyone from, like, I don't know, Haiti or Ghana. No equator in this world, evidently. Genshin Impact has a reputation for being a kid-friendly game, and on the surface, it absolutely is. Bright colors, overly friendly dialogue, and of course, Paimon's entire existence. That's the face the game presents to the world, but beneath that cheerful mask lies something else entirely. There's a side to Genshin that isn't advertised, isn't voiced, and is barely talked about, hidden deep within the game's lore. Here, the stories are vile, tragic, and disturbingly dark. No topic, and I literally mean no topic, no matter how heinous, is off limits. Whatever topic you think will get brought up in this video, I promise you, it's far worse. But what are the worst of these stories? The darkest tales buried deep into Vat's forgotten corners. Just how deep does this rabbit hole of evil really go? Welcome, my succulent bear, to the 5 darkest stories in Genshin Impact. This isn't going to be in order, by the way. Usually we do lists in order because it's just more fun that way, but I really don't feel like sitting here and ranking evils. Now, before I start, I just want to say, guys, let's keep the degeneracy in the comments to a minimum with regards to some of these topics. Look, there's a time and a place, and this is not the time nor the place. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Your comments are going to get judged by the court of public opinion, so good luck to you, brave soldier. Meet Vacher. At first glance, he seems unremarkable, just another face in the crowd, but beneath that ordinary facade lies one of the darkest horrors Teyvat has ever known. A cold and calculating serial killer, perhaps the most prolific in Teyvat's history. For 23 long years, Vacher preyed on the innocent, kidnapping, experimenting on, and ultimately murdering 24 women. His descent into madness wasn't born from hatred, but from love, twisted into something awful. It all began the moment he lost his partner, Visionaire. The love of his life, she died the instant she touched the waters of the primordial sea, and her death broke him, and left him desperate to see her again, causing Vacher to consider ending his own life, until obsession offered him another path, one that wouldn't see him go to her, but bring her to him. His method was to kidnap, experiment on, then ultimately kill women using the primordial sea, with the aim of studying how primordial seawater dissolved the bodies of women who resembled Visionaire. But it wouldn't end there, as Vacher would eventually find himself as the leader of a drug ring. To fund his research, Vacher created Synth, a drug crafted from diluted primordial seawater. It offered euphoric heights before leaving the user with serious withdrawals. In the opening scene of Fontaine's Archon quest, Vacher was on the hunt yet again, but this time, fate intervened. His would-be victim fought back, turning the hunter into prey, and the scene ends with a sort of justice. Vacher's accomplice crushed beneath the weight of a giant tank. His next on-screen murder would follow when his identity was close to being revealed, causing Vacher to instantly kill the man. My friends, all people eventually meets their maker, and Vacher is no different. His end would come with him dragged into the harsh light of a public trial, before winding up in front of the Fountain of Lucine once more. There, the souls of his victims awaited him in the form of Oceanids, and they offered no forgiveness, only vengeance, and drowned Vacher to death on the spot. A war drags out the darkest parts of humanity, and little is this more evident than in Inazuma's civil war. Even the noble resistance of Watatsumi Island under the leadership of Sangonomiya Kokomi wasn't immune to that corruption. Nowhere was this more tragically evident than in the massacre at Higi village. Nestled on Yashiori Island, Higi village bore the brunt of Inazuma's civil war. Its people suffered mercilessly, not only from the chaos of battle, but also from the shogun's army, who seized their supply of crystal marrow and kept them under constant threat to prevent any alliance with the resistance. As resources dwindled, the villagers turned to a system of equal distribution, pooling what little they had to survive and defend against pirates. For a time, things were going alright, but true horror struck when Kokomi left temporarily to meet with mercenaries then, a Fatui agent hidden within the army, acting on Lord Piero's orders, manipulated zealots within the Watatsumi army to destroy the sacred wards that protected Yashiori Island from the lingering curse of the dead god Urabashi. With the wards shattered, the Tatarigami curse spread like a plague. It twisted the land and the flesh of those who came into contact with it, unleashing fever, rashes, migraines, auditory hallucinations, bleeding from every orifice, madness, before ultimately death. Higi village, already weakened, was consumed by the curse. Some fled, others succumbed to insanity or died from the sickness. Among the cursed was Washizu, the village chief, who spiraled into a horrifying delusion. He claimed to see a monstrous god having 18 pairs of blood-red eyes, venomous fangs, and countless mouths thirsting for blood, and so Washizu would satiate the god's hunger for blood by slaughtering his own village. It didn't matter who they were, man, woman, child, their blood was the god's offering. His ledger bore witness to his atrocities, recording the facts that he even murdered a 4-year-old boy in service to the imagined god. In the end, it was the traveler who put Washizu down, but by then, the damage was already done. Higi village had become nothing more than a monument to suffering, its people lost to madness, death, and despair. Perhaps the first instance of mankind ruling themselves also stands as the clearest example why Celestia and the heavenly principles are needed. When Enkanomiya sank beneath the land, its people found themselves without divine guidance for the first time. Alone, they were left to govern themselves. Though a spark of divine intervention lingered, Abaraku's creation of the Danichi Mikoshi, a radiant sun meant to stave off the darkness and keep the Bathsimal bishops at bay, beyond that brief touch, they were left to their own devices, and govern themselves they would. It wasn't long before corruption took roots. A band of nobles hungry for power twisted faith into a tool of control. They convinced the masses that the Danichi Mikoshi was a god to be worshipped. After seizing power, they would not rule openly. Instead, they remained in the shadows, pulling strings through puppet rulers, children known as the Sun Children. These children wielded no true power. They existed only to bear the hatred of the people, enacting cruel decrees on behalf of the nobles. The masses, blinded by anger, saw through the scheme, but they didn't care. Their rage was easier to direct at the faces they can see than the ones they can't see. As the nobles grew richer, so too did the people's hatred for the Sun Child who sat atop the false throne, yet these were just children, isolated, frightened, and powerless. As talk of rebellion grew louder, the Sun Children's mental regressed even further. They became scared, lonely, and helpless. The nobles forbade anyone from comforting them, ensuring their isolation was absolute. When a Sun Child reached a certain age, they would face the rite of solar return. They'd be taken to the Danichi Mikoshi, the very symbol of their so-called divinity, and they'd be burned alive, sacrificed so a new child could take their place. The official reason from the nobles was clear: the children could not afford to be tainted by the mortal worlds, but the grim truth was far darker. The nobles needed to constantly replace the Sun Child before they realized they were being manipulated. All in all, there were 7 Sun Children. Although brief, Lynettes' backstory has quite possibly the darkest implication of any backstory within the game. Lynettes and Lyney were orphaned at a young age, and while living on the streets, Lyney would observe and study a certain street performer so as to become a magician of his own. Lynettes would be his assistant, and together, they'd make a name for themselves, catching the eye of a certain aristocrat who offered to bring the two in so as to have them perform at banquets all over Fontaine. It was at one of these banquets Lynette would catch the eye of an older noble who was smitten with the child, which led to both the noble and the aristocrat who took Lynette in, forcing her into the noble's car. The noble would then take Lynette to his house and tie her in the basement where several other orphan children were already shackled. Before any harm could come to Lynette, however, Arlecchino would kill the noble and free all in the basement, taking in Lynette and Lyney. Again, this one is brief, but fuck me, bro. And ending on a higher note, or not a higher note, but it's kind of comical just because it feels like Hoyo are doing everything in their power to make this son of a bitch as evil as possible. It's the Doctor. Honestly, this nigga, I could sit here and tell you about 5 different things he did last week that would occupy spots number 1 through 5 on this list. My favorite comment I've ever seen with regards to the Doctor is this nigga treats the Geneva Conventions like a to-do list. I mean, dudes. Cold-blooded murder, we got that. Child experimentation, we got that. Kidnapping, we got that. Murder for fun, we got that. I suppose I should just return to the serious nature for this video once more, though. Of the many crimes the Doctor has committed, his fascination with child experimentation seems to be the highlight of his portfolio. I mean, he keeps going back to it, bro. Be it before he assumed the moniker of the Doctor, such as a time in Opham Woods where he worked hard to kidnap a bunch of kids to experiment on, only for those damned R&R to free them all, or the old House of the Hearth where Dottore and Cruciabina had a deal, sending orphans who were weak to the Doctor where he'd experiment on them till death, or the beginning of the manga where we see some death pit and it sees kid number 139 perish, leading to Dottore and Krupp going to Mondstadt to ask them if they can borrow some kids for life. And even if you are a kid who managed to survive your run-in with the Doctor, it'd leave you with nothing short of PTSD.
Paimon won't forget this! It's time for some primordial wrath! No! Don't touch me! Oh, sorry, Kale. Paimon didn't mean to scare you. No, I just... I didn't mean that. Kale, are you okay? What's the matter? No, I'm fine. I'm sorry. I must have startled you both reacting like that.
I mean, look, this guy is a clear cut above the rest, and none of this is even bringing up the fact that, you know, he choked his soon-to-be girlfriend Sora to death, or he killed Scaramouche's friend and cut out his heart. I remember way back when I did a video on the Doctor. I went back and I read everything about him and came up with a list of crimes he'd be charged with. This is what I got.
First-degree murder, second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, illegal imprisonment, kidnapping, torture, assault and battery, illegal human experimentation, conspiracy, membership in a criminal organization, espionage, sabotage, wrongful death, disfigurement of a corpse, mutilation of a corpse, illegal disposal of human remains, forced labor, crimes against humanity, trafficking, impersonation of an official, undue influence, invasion of serious privacy, drug-induced assault, unlawful administration of a controlled substance, illegal organ trafficking, intimidation, coercion, stalking, criminal threats, cruelty to animals, illegal forced combat, child endangerment, child kidnapping, child abuse, child exploitation, and child neglect.
And the only reason I'm like sort of losing composure with this last one is just because it feels like the writing team like claps their hands and just sat in a circle and we're like, bro, how can we make this man as evil as possible, bro? They just, with this guy, they keep going back to the kids, bro.